can reach out to us that way, but otherwise just go ahead and raise your hand and the chair will recognize you. I think that's
awesome. Thank you. And to raise your hand, there's a little smiley face at the top of your screen, and you just hover over that and then just click that hand, and I'll try to catch you as much as I can. Okay. Oh, there's Miss Conway. All right. Agenda item number 5. Oh no, I'm sorry. Number 4, discussion and possible action to amend the January 11th, 2021 meeting minutes. They were posted on the website under the meeting and minutes tab. We don't need a vote to approve them unless you do have a change. Does anybody have any comments or changes with regards to those minutes from last time? Seeing none, I think we're good to go on those. And then did we have any comments? I know as of last week, we didn't have any comments from the public or written comments received on non-agenda items. Did we have any updates from staff? Anybody?
No comments, no additional comments were received.
Awesome. Okay. All right, let's move along here. Staff report on education enforcement matters. Ms. Pim Mayo is going to provide us an update on the report. The report was in your backup.
Do I need to share my screen? Good morning, everyone. Or if you have it in front of you, I won't share. Whatever you prefer.
I mean, I have it pulled up, but it was only just one, right?
Right.
Yeah. Why don't you just speak to it?
Sure. Good morning. I'm Pim Mayo. I'm a staff attorney in the Enforcement Division, and I'm the liaison to ESAC. Easing you back into enforcement reports, just one case. It was an advisory letter. This was actually a complaint made by a student that her legal update course was not updated timely. And we did find that the provider was using an old version of the legal update, and but they did timely update it once they received the complaint and did their own investigation. So we issued an advisory letter. And what happened there was, if you recall, in November, the contracts were pulled from proposal. And so we had to amend all the legal update courses, and education staff did send information to all the providers for legal update, but this provider failed to timely update their course.
Okay, thanks, Pam. Any questions from the group?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I was pleased that there was only one violation this time, so I thought that was making progress of our providers. Let's move on to decision item number 8. This is actually stemming from Commissioner Scott Kesner's request that this body provide feedback and updates on hot topics to be incorporated into the Legal 1 and 2 courses. And I'm seeing Abby raise your hand. Am I missing something?
Sorry, we just skipped over number 6, which is our update from Leslie Lerner.
I skipped right over it. You're absolutely right. Thank you. And she's right there in my face. I see you, Leslie. Hi. Okay, so a little context here. Thank you, Abby. Update from the Broker Responsibility Working Group. We have the chair, Ms. Leslie Lerner, and she's going to give us an update on what is going on with that work group and how this body is going to play a role in the work that they're doing. So Leslie, thank you for coming. Thank you for joining. I didn't mean to jump over you.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I hope you had a great weekend. Kalea and Vanessa and Abby and I talked just a while back. Broker Responsibility Working Group has been working diligently to kind of find a balance between education and experience. And we did give some recommendations to the commission to take to the proceedings this year, but I don't think that that's going to get through. So we're trying to figure out a nice way to, I guess, make our profession a bit more valuable. And many of us have found that the quality of agents is decreasing. And I don't know that it's all based. I don't know that it's all education based, but we believe that maybe there needs to be some more oversight and training within the individual brokerages. So we're trying to figure out the best way to go about that. And so what we're doing is surveying some of your members, our members, to see what their recommendations are and maybe come together to make some recommendations. So what you will get after this meeting is a survey asking you your thoughts and opinions, which we would greatly appreciate. And then hopefully we could make a group of some of you and some of our group to move forward with making some recommendations.
Thank you, Leslie. Mr. Jacobus, we see you. Thanks for joining us. And just a reminder to please mute yourself if you're not speaking. Candy has a question.
There are people in the waiting room. I'm getting text asking if somebody can check and see.
I don't see anyone. Amber, do you see anyone in the waiting room?
I do not see anyone.
John Hauser and Robin are both supposedly sitting in the waiting room. Let me go back and text them. Okay.
Maybe if they'll log out and log back in, we'll see them pop up.
Maybe so.
I don't see them on my end either.
They might be using an old meeting link. Sometimes we're finding that is an issue.
The link is, if they are by chance, they can just download the agenda on the TREC website, and there should be a link right there that they could click on to join.
Okay. Thank you. So there was a couple, when Leslie and the TREC staff and I met, there was a couple of just ideas of some outreach in addition to some education that sort of we could maybe coincide to help this initiative. And obviously our purview is the education side. So we're just trying to marry those two. And we thought that the best way to do that with regards to capturing as much of the feedback as we can would be in the form of a survey. So following this meeting, you will get a survey. Please fill that out. And that will help sort of guide our responses back to the broker working group. One thing I did want to make sure that we understand ahead of that survey is, Ms. Wheeler, Jennifer, if you would please speak to it as far as what broker responsibility courses we do have, what are the differences between each of those so that we have a clear understanding, because I know that there's quite a bit of components with regards to pre-licensing, the 30-hour brokerage course, the broker responsibility course that is mandatory for managers. So if you could speak to that a little bit, that would be great. And then Kelly, I see that you have a question. Why don't you go ahead, Kelly, and then Jennifer can speak to the education requirements that are currently in place.
Thanks so much. Sorry, Leslie, I may have misunderstood you. Did you say you didn't think it was an education problem, or you all think it is an education problem?
I mean, it all goes back to education and where it's coming from. Do I think people, or do we think people need to sit in real estate school longer? Maybe not, but there definitely needs to be some education for the broker and you know, where the brokerage they're working with.
I mean, one observation I have is that brokers offer a lot of education, but their agents don't necessarily take the education. So unfortunately, I think it becomes a mandatory scenario, and I don't know that we're trying to make more and more education mandatory, but that's, but I mean, we can fill all that out on the questionnaire, but I just wasn't clear if I had heard you correctly on that. So it's just trying to figure out how to get that down to the level of the agent is what I'm hearing you. Is that correct?
Correct. And we're also trying to balance the governor's mandate or the government's
right.
judgment, which kind of impacts everything we do. So we've tossed around mentorships or just different oversight scenarios, that kind of thing, to just make us a little bit more valuable.
Great.
I think what it boils down to is it's that broker-agent relationship, both from the agent's perspective as to what the broker is responsible for, as well as the broker's relationship with the agent, and really being that mentor and having oversight over what the agent is doing. And so that's sort of that rub, right? So we have the education piece, but then we also have the education piece with regards to it disseminating down into that level of ensuring that broker-agent relationship is being managed correctly. Jennifer, why don't you chime in a little bit? Give us a rundown on all of this brokerage responsibility stuff. That way, when we do the survey, we have a clear understanding of what we're talking about.
Sure. Thanks, Kalea. One of the things that I found in these conversations is the importance of understanding the distinctions between the different courses. So just, you know, and we've got a lot of very similar terminology. So we have the broker responsibility course, which is the 6-hour non-elective course that specific license holders with specific responsibilities are required to take. And basically that's an update course. It's not a preliminary introduction into the relationship between the broker and the sales agent, but it's, you know, it's updating you on trends and current issues and things like that. And then there is separately the 30-hour real estate brokerage course. And that's the pre-licensing course required for any, you know, broker applicants to take. That course was revised by ESAC several years ago, and primarily is really a brokerage business course. It's about, you know, setting up your brokerage business and what your responsibilities are, and those types of things. And I think another distinction that we need to consider is the broker responsibility working group, which makes recommendations, you know, can make recommendations to education and experience. But then you also have the broker responsibility writing group, which is the writing group that develops the content for the 6-hour non-elective courses. So as we're talking about all these different terms and groups and things like that, it's just important to remember what each of them are and what the purpose of those groups and those courses currently are. I think one of the things that I've heard from Leslie and the broker responsibility working group is looking towards something that is a little more sales agent and broker relationship obligations and duties and those types of things. And so that's where this group might have some helpful input as well. That.
Yes, thank you so much. That was helpful.
Everything.
I do see that somebody else has joined. If you would please mute yourself so we don't have any phones ringing. That would be great. And I just saw John. I'm admitting him as well now. Thank you so much, Jennifer. That was helpful. Does anybody have any questions on the distinctions? Miss Kelly, I see you have your hand raised. Yes, ma'am. No? She just unclicked that button and it'll come up.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
It's okay. Did you have any questions for us?
No, I didn't. I apologize. That was left over.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions with regards to the education that's currently out there and some of those discretions that Jennifer spoke to? That's helpful. Vanessa.
Hey everyone. I was just going to chime in a little bit. I've been working with both Kelly and Leslie on this topic, and Jennifer as well. So as Leslie said, you guys are going to receive a survey, and the broker responsibility working group will look at your answers, and that'll kind of start this conversation. And like Leslie said, with the potential of a little bit of like a crossover mini working group. We love our working groups at this agency. And so, but that might be a really neat opportunity to start thinking, you know, Kelly mentioned, and Leslie, this, we run into this wall of, you know, we don't want to go too far. We don't want to just do education, but where's there room in the education to address, as Kalea said, at that broker agent relationship where the broker knows their responsibilities and the agent knows their responsibilities, and they understand what their broker does and should be doing and when they should be going to their broker and things like that. So I think this is the beginning of, just from my limited time here, this seems to be what everyone wants to talk about. And I think we have a real opportunity here because Chair Kestner is also super interested in this. And so this is a real opportunity to start looking, okay, where, like Jennifer said, where could it fall in education? And that really lends itself to all of you on ESAC. I think also just sort of the sub bonus of this is we have two groups of really interested and engaged members. So that's an opportunity to start talking not only in the education component, but this is something that I know Broker Responsibility Working Group is also looking at, is potential forms of outreach. Like what could TREC do? What could these groups do? Where, I know I take a bunch of CLE and I sit there and people are just doing work the whole time, right? Not everyone, but probably the ones that need to be listening are not. So what can we do? How can we sort of get outside of the box and inside of the box? Because we do want to look at actual education stuff, but outreach, just really, I don't know, I guess I would say like that survey that Leslie, she puts these surveys together and then she takes them and she compiles all the information. If you can fill that out, it'll be super helpful to start developing that and to start thinking, okay, well, this is something that, I know I hear everybody talking about what are some ideas? Where can we get? What are we seeing? Is there commonality in what you guys are seeing in your industry that we as TREC probably don't know, right? We don't see that. And just really, I don't know, I'm being a little bit cheesy, but like unwrapping that box and figuring it out, and let's see where we can go and what we can do with it. I know that both Clay and Leslie are super interested in this, and I just think this is a really good opportunity. So that survey will be coming to you, and I hope that you all fill it out, and they're going to share it at the Broker Responsibility Working Group meets next week. We're in the midst of all of our committee stuff, but that'll be a really good talking point and a really good conversation, I think, for these two groups to have together. That's all. I'm just cheerleading.
Thank you, Vanessa. Yeah, we're definitely into it. We're in it to win it. So please fill out that survey. What is the deadline? Is it Friday to fill that out? Would that be the best deadline?
I think that works well. That would, okay. And we'll send it right after this. That'll give time to compile the responses ahead of the Broker Responsibility Working Group meeting.
Okay, excellent. Any other comments on this agenda item?
Yes.
Mr. Stedham, yes, sir.
So I have a question. Wouldn't the relationship between the agent and the broker best be served in Legal 1 and Legal 2 update, which we're going to be looking at here in a minute anyways?
Yes, that's a great segue, actually. Thank you for bringing that up. And I think that looking at all of the education is relevant. With regards to broker responsibility, kind of tapping into many different facets of the education that TREC mandates, I think is it's appropriate to look at. So thank you for that. I agree with you. And we're going to segue right into that. So hold that thought. Linda, I see your hand raised. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment that our brokerage has chosen to, in our policies and procedures manual, that each agent before their license renewal has to take broker responsibility. That we want our agents and broker associates to know what our brokerage is responsible for.
Mm-hmm. And that's right in line with this conversation of what is that agent broker relationship and knowing what both sides are responsible for as a practitioner. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. Wonderful. Anybody else before we move on? Ms. Kelly, I see your hand.
Thank you, ma'am. Just a quick comment. I just want to point out, I'm on the title industry side of things, see lots of contracts go through our office. And one thing I want to point out is TREC goes so far above and beyond to even put in the contract something as clear as do not reserve mineral rights right here under paragraph 2 where you're supposed to exclude draperies. And I still see plenty of contracts where people do that. So I just plant that seed that when we're filling out the questionnaire is how do we get as far as educating that agent that's still sitting out there even doing that when there's even a clear sentence that says don't put mineral right reservation here, it's supposed to be in the addendum. So to me, it goes, there's such a lack of working responsibility around the contract, of knowledge, of working ability around the contracts themselves. And yes, they're taught that beforehand, but I for myself, I've landed with, because I've hemmed and hawed over this question, the mentorship, somebody walking you through that knows, you know, hey, be mindful of this sentence, you got to use the addendum, things like that, that, you know, they're too overwhelmed maybe when they're taking the classes to become an agent to really understand that it's the working aspect of it. But it shocks me how many times that still is even present with a sentence like that in there. And so to me, there's a real breakdown of then getting it to the agent and the working ability of things. So anyway, I went on my soapbox. I will stop talking.
Well, kudos to this group for pushing through that 3 hours of mandatory contracts for renewal. And then also, Kelly, please be sure to provide that feedback in the survey. That's exactly the type of thing that we're looking for with regards to a mentorship. I know that when I had a meeting with Chair Kessner as well as Ms. Buchholz, that came up. And I think that's kind of been something that they've been chewing on for a while now. So let's put that into the survey as feedback, and we'll make sure it gets lands in the right spot. Okay, let's move on to discussion item number 8 on the agenda. We did send out, along with the agenda materials, a request for you to kind of brainstorm on your own about some hot topics. Chair Kessner has tasked us with providing the working group or the writing group with some feedback with regards to updating those case studies, updating those hot topics that can be included in Legal 1 and 2. And just a reminder, we do have 3 professionals on this group, Mr. Porter, Mr. Underwood, who just joined us, welcome, and Ms. Marion Napoleon, that serve on that working group. And so instead of setting up yet another working group, we thought, well, let's just give them our feedback and do a little roundtable discussion today. And with the hopes that they'll capture that, we can maybe identify a couple of really hot topics that bubble up to the top, and they can take that to their business in that working group. In the backup, there was provided the outline of what is included and the mandatory topics that are included. That was in your agenda. So take a look at that. We don't want to repeat ourselves if we don't have to, but if there's anything that bubbles up that you want to bring to the table, now is the time. So I'm going to look at hands. So Mr. Sedem, I know that you had just talked about something that I think pertains to this. So let's let you kick us off. And I see Jennifer, I see your hand too. So you're next.
Well, I think that it would be very prudent to make sure that our agents throughout the real estate industry understand the relationship between the agent and the broker. I'm not 100% sure they do. And we have a ton of agents in our brokerage, and that's always something that we're focusing on. The second thing, if there's a way we can make realtors read, which I understand in Legal 1 and 2, reading is not part of the subject, but it does seem that realtors suffer from a realtors don't read disease. And that goes exactly what Kelly was speaking about. And if there's a way that maybe in a case study, we can start to point out that there's language in the contract for a reason. And if we would simply follow that, it would be very, very helpful. And then off topic, it would be really good if before we graduated an agent and getting their license, they were required to fill out a contract, improve competency in filling out a contract, which I don't believe is a requirement. And I have yet to hire an agent in 22 years that can fill out a contract accurately.
Thank you. Miss Jennifer.
Thanks. Yeah, to Mr. Stedham, I just wanted to add, and I know that this is not sufficient enough to determine whether somebody can accurately complete a contract, but just as an FYI, we have added over the last couple of years a couple of interactive contract-related exam items on the licensing exam, the state portion of the licensing exam. So we have taken that initiative of, again, I know that that doesn't ensure full competency, but it is a step that we've taken. And then I just wanted to speak to, as one of the members of the writing group, and having met with Charles and Marion and Byron, along with the other members of the writing group. I just wanted to give you guys a quick update on the topics specifically regarding racism and discrimination that the committee has so far discussed. And then I will, of course, if any of those three want to add to what I have to say, please do. I know Charles has done some more work. But some of the topics that have already been discussed are, of course, discrimination in real estate transactions and racism in Texas. We're considering that 3-year investigative study that took place in New York. Not sure if you all are familiar with that. Unconscious bias in the real estate profession, disabled and differently abled people and how they impact transactions, Equality Act implications, and then discrimination by lenders on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity, and the fact that that's illegal. So I just wanted to lay that out for you before you get too deep.
That's super helpful. Thank you. Okay, Miss Kelly, did you have another comment? See your hand. She's just gonna have her
All right,
hand
this is
ever
it.
raised
I
the whole
promise.
meeting.
I promise. Okay, those are wonderful topics. That's exciting. A couple of topics I would throw out there would be education around PUDs, PIDs, MUDs, lots of confusion around that. I would actually even propose an edit to the 1-to-4 contract in general to that issue. But that's a side note. That's probably for the broker lawyer committee. But definite education around PUD, PIDs, MUDs, and then also would throw out there how the appraisal addendum works when you're trying to also get an FHA or VA loan, because it really doesn't work that way. And yet people are trying to work around that. And so maybe just clear discussion and understanding about FHA, VA, and kind of the requirements that those have from an underwriting standpoint as to why that language is in there that way. And then again, additionally, the PUD, PID, MUD fiasco that's out there. That's it. I will put my hand down.
Feedback. Thank you. And I've captured that as well. Anybody else have thoughts on, and just so you know, Marion and Charles and Byron, we will capture this and send it to you via email just to make sure that, you've got everything down. Dr. Porter, do you have a comment?
I don't know if it's appropriate, but just so you'll know, kind of, Jennifer, you tell me if I'm heading the wrong direction, but I volunteered and we've already posted a draft of an outline for both manuals. And in that draft of the outline, people are making comments now, and we actually took that draft of the outline and plugged in 1101.455, all 14 or 15 different areas that it could apply to. By the way, Bill, part of the fiduciary ethics chapter that Byron and I are working on, there's a whole section about competency, and that's where it's going to fit exactly in what you talked about. It'll talk about how you assess competency, that relationship there. Clay, I don't know if you want me to kind of go over this outline or step back at this point, but I mean, we've got something on everything, and we talked about rearranging it this year to where we start out kind of at a big cornucopia approach with the federal area moving down into the state area in more detail.
That's wonderful.
And contracted everything, but tell me if you want me to mention that or step back for now.
Why don't we do this? I see Mr. Albert's hand is raised. I want to make sure we give everybody an opportunity to speak, and then I definitely would like to hear your outline and ensure that there's not any last minute topics that we're missing. Sure. Also, Ms. Candy Cook, I know that you probably have a comment or two about appraisal issues. And so I want to make sure that if there's anything there that we're not capturing that might be relevant to this conversation, that we're taking advantage of that. So, Mr. Albers, yes, sir.
All right. So in the vein of hot topics, I thought about the things that I've been getting multiple questions on. And one of those is multiple offers. Multiple offers have been addressed before. but I think they need to be addressed again, especially in the Austin, Central Texas area. There are multiple offers are the norm at this point. Another thing is seller defaults. I agree with the other comments that people aren't reading the contract. Lots of times when I answer questions, I start out with, well, let's read that section of the contract. And you'd be amazed how often the answer is right there. But seller defaults is becoming a big thing in, again, the Central Texas hot market. I have referred 3 different seller defaults to litigators. They're clearly that over the term of the contract, the seller got a higher offer in, and the seller's willing to take the risk of what's going to happen to the seller in defaulting under the contract to try to get the higher price. And the one litigator that I've talked to, that I've referred all 3 of these to, said that in the past 30 years, he has not seen a specific performance case whereby a buyer is trying to enforce specific performance under a real estate contract. And in 6 weeks, he's seen 3. So it's rampant, and that is a hot topic. Kind of in that same arena is the time is of the essence issue. I'd love to see a sidebar in the course about time is of the essence. I don't think the agents understand what time is of the essence. I think the broker lawyer committee has done an excellent job with it, because they put it in bold on the paragraphs in which it applies, and they even put the definition in bold after they say time is of the essence, and people still don't understand it. So at least a sidebar explaining that time is of the essence, what it means, how it applies to everybody's obligations under all of the provisions of the contract, under all the dates, because it doesn't apply to all the dates. It only applies to 2 of them. Intermediary is not a new topic, but I think it's still a hot topic. I think people are getting better with intermediary. Each year it gets a little bit better, but I still see lots and lots of people not understanding what intermediary is. And then, of course, the recent contract changes, but that ought to be in there already. So that's my list of hot topics.
Thank you. I'm making a list, and then we'll, I think, maybe cross off once Dr. Porter has told us that all of that is in there. Anybody else?
I really wanted to address this.
Good.
Can you not see my hands up?
I just saw it when you started talking.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Candy. What you got?
We got a major problem because we don't have enough education in pre-licensing for people to understand appraisals, and you guys are coming into a major problem right now. The agents don't understand how the appraisal fits into the transaction. We're not educating enough on that. The appraisers don't work for anybody in the transaction except for the lender. The lenders, I think we need to have some sort of, maybe even an infographic about how all the pieces go together, because the third-party financing addendum addresses whether it's loan approval or time for property approval. It's turned into chaos. And when we talk about the the appraisal addendum, people don't understand what they're doing. People are bringing $100,000 to the closing to go between appraisal and purchase price. And when we and I think it was Kelly said, we're having a major issue with them. We need to figure out a solution for VA and FHA. We can't. It's a federal law that FHA and VA get to walk away. They can offer to pay more, but they cannot be forced to pay more or asked to pay more. That's their protection, and I think we're lacking in this. I spend hours every week educating on this, and it's scary, guys. Because the other thing is who is liable in this appraisal addendum thing when next year these people go to sell their house and they can't get their money back out of the house. We're painting targets on our license holders.
Yeah, that's a very real topic right now, especially in Central Texas. Thank you, Candy. I've captured some of those, some of that feedback. Is there anybody else that would like to say a few words? And then Dr. Porter will give us a rundown of what the outline looks like as of today. And if you have raised your hand, if you would unclick your hand so that unless like Miss Kelly, Miss Candy, Miss Jennifer, do you guys still want to speak? I see all of your hands raised. So I'm just trying to manage that. If you don't, then please uncheck your hand. Miss Conway, did you have?
Conway.
Linda.
Linda.
I'm looking at all the names here.
I'm piggybacking on what Candy is saying. We are also seeing leasing agents and brokers who do not understand why you cannot lift verbiage out of the appraisal addendum and put in special provisions for FHA and VA contracts. And, well, we do it all the time. And if you don't do it, we're not going to present your offer to the seller. So we need to get clear on some things because there are listing agents who are preventing consumers the right to have an offer on the table in front of the seller. It is not up to them to choose the parameters of presentation of offers. That is established already within our Real Estate Licensing Act and so forth. So this is bothering me because I get this several times a day. It's not just occasional. It is consistent every day. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Mr. Porter, why don't you give us a rundown of the outline?
Perfect.
And then what we'll do is another little roundtable if we're missing anything, and then I'd like to move on.
Okay, I'll be quick. First of all, please, every one of you, email me, text me, whatever, any comments you have, please. I'm begging for that. I'll look at it without a doubt. We have another meeting on April the 8th coming up. Legal One, just real quick, of course, introduction. We're going to talk about Chapter 1 legislative and rules update, including lawsuits. We're moving in. We'll have fair housing, the One America principle. We've started to assign or had people volunteer for different parts. A comment about antitrust, the DOJ NAR settlement. Avis has been interested in that. Candy and Linda, we've got a spot for in this first part VHA and VA changes. In the first chapter, we're going to Legal One. We've got federal income tax regulation, which of course are going to be upcoming. We've got a section for rule changes that'll come up after the and lets things out of the statutes in the next in our legislative session when it ends. Chapter 2 is called so far Temporary Diversity and Inclusion and Racism, which Jennifer's mentioned. We've included all that. Chapter 3 in Legal One will be promulgated contracts and forms. And here's where we'll also, Avis has already volunteered in Marion to talk about appraisal issues, which is some of what you've already talked about. So please help us with that. We'll have a complete promulgated forms update, backup contracts and offers, option money changes, proper use of paragraph 21. We're also going to talk about, of course, unauthorized practice of law. We're going to have a comment, and probably we're already discussing this, about how much we want to say about NAR updates and changes that may come about or have come about. Chapter 5, of course, will be court cases, case studies, and we're talking about ways to better present these case studies in court cases. As you move into Legal 2, and I'm really I'm moving briefly through this. We're going to start out with, of course, an introduction. We'll discuss probably back in the contract section, surveys and copyrights on surveys, which is already becoming an issue here and there. Avis is going to talk about that. The first chapter will be fiduciary duties and ethical behavior. Byron and I are working on that already, have an outline that we've done amongst us ourselves. We'll be talking about I'll kind of talk a little bit about how our canons of ethics have come about from 1976. Maybe just a few sentences about that. The first change, of course, came in the last session with geographic competency. We're going to talk about what fiduciary duty is. We're going to try to redefine or bring up again the definition of scrupulous and meticulous, which we didn't define at TREC until Ethics Manual 4.0 in 2010. And those definitions are scary, but we're going to talk about that. What do we mean about treating other parties fairly? Of course, no one's the head of a client. I'm going to have a part of that chapter about integrity, 531.2. Then there'll be a good bit about competency and geographic competency. How do you assess geographic competency? I wrote an article in Texas Realtor magazine that was published right after that became law back in November of that year. Court cases, TREC violations, all those things. Then we're going to have chapter 2, agency risk management issues and best practices. That's where we've got multiple officers, short sales. Rick, that's a great idea. Add seller defaults and timing of the essence and specific performance. I run into all that right now as an expert witness all the time. Same old thing again. Seller's disclosure is still, I'm at 700 expert witness cases now in 30 years, and about half of them have to do with some kind of disclosure issue. It's still there. Avis wants to do an fallow update, best practices in seller disclosure notice. I want to talk about 1101.652 B3 and 4, how it relates. Then we're going to have something that I still want to mention a little bit about seller's disclosure after Harvey. Gary Pate and I wrote an article about that in Texas Realtor magazine in November 2017, which ties into the changes the legislature made into the disclosure in the property code in the last session. This is one that I proposed. Don't know if it'll get anywhere, but a discussion of 1101.805 and 1101.551. What is a party? And then what are license holders' duties when it comes to actual knowledge about the parties not disclosing things that they should have disclosed, or misrepresentations and those kind of things. Chapter 3, landlord tenant property management update. We'll have any changes to the landlord tenant from the legislation, new case studies. Chapter 4, Avis and I'm very much volunteered, and we'll do this chapter about water rights. Y'all probably know I've had a little bit to do with that. I think it's just absolutely critical. We've got another drought sneaking in from West Texas that's horrible. In teaching my farm and ranch classes for Texas Alliance of Land Brokers, Austin Board of Realtors, and around the state, we've got to have a better understanding of water rights. We've got the Hank Hill propane paragraph in our contracts. We've got, in the farm and ranch, we've got the Agricultural Development District, which there's never been one. And I've got to find a way to balance that to where, our license holders can't practice law, but we need to have a better understanding of water rights. And I'll do my very best on that. I've already outlined that part. Chapter 5, ad valorem taxation and valuation issues. Most of you may realize I've already had my audit at my farm that was in a wildlife management plan, an audit first time in 21 years. I passed with flying colors, but I do all 7 practices. We've got a shortage in the budget. And we proposed a chapter about that, to consider that. Rollback tax changes. Those are something no one understands much about rollback. I think the very best rollback estimator is, of all things, done at the Ellis County Appraisal District site, which is in Waxahachie, Texas. I think that's important. And I think also, Candy, and Others of you, I think I want to include, brokers' price opinions and Trek Rule 535.17 and not using the word value. There you go. I mean, I think it's critical. We need to keep driving that in and driving that in and driving that in. And of course, case studies on license holders' duties and responsibilities and ad valorem taxation. What do you do if you're representing a seller and you go out there and you realize, okay, you have an ag valuation, but you're really not qualified for it? What do we do there? What are our duties in that? There'll be appendices and further reading. We have really tried our very best on this outline draft that we're beginning to make comments on. We literally have at the end of it every single one of the comments that were on in 1101.455. We've assigned something there, and every bit of comments y'all have, I've made notes about today. So please, again, I've been too long. I'm sorry, but please don't hesitate one bit to send us and send me this time. I may lose the battle. I want to have footnotes. I want to have sources. There are a lot of changes in these URLs that happen between manual publication, but doggone it, if we title them properly, you can still go back to it. And I think I want to prepare this not for 7th graders. I want to prepare it for graduate school folks, because this is the manual that should rule our behavior as license holders. So thank you for listening to me, and I'll step off my soapbox.
I love the soapbox. That was actually one, thank you so much for that. That was the not using the word value was actually on my list. So I'm glad you brought that up. It seems to me like we have a pretty comprehensive outline so far. Candy, did you have any other comments? I see your hand raised. And Miss Jennifer also.
My hand is down.
Oh, it was still raised on my side. Okay.
It says raise hand.
Okay. Jennifer.
I did raise my hand again because, Charles graciously offered for the committee members to email him with any other topic ideas, but I might suggest copying also Byron and Marion so that, all of the representation of ESAC is getting the same message and can bring that back to the writing group.
Great. Thank you. Okay.
Can I interject on that?
Yes.
Will you all send your suggestions? I'm just trying to keep all the communications in one spot and not get into an open meeting situation.
Right.
Can you send your suggestions? We've I think been documenting all this. Just send it to Abby, myself, Amber, or just me, and I'll get it to those folks.
Okay. So final directive is to please send it to
Just send it to Vanessa.
To Vanessa, and she will make sure to keep us out of hot water and make sure that Charles, Marion, and Byron all have a comprehensive list of everything that we identified today. And I'll be sure to send mine as well. So thank you so much. Kelly, did you have another question or comment? I see your hand raised too.
No, sorry about that. I didn't realize it was still raised.
That's all right. No worries. All right, let's move along to agenda item number 9, discussion and possible action regarding professional designations. As we talked about the last meeting, we wanted to reignite our working group that we prematurely ignited last year. And this is with regards to cleaning up the Rule 535.92 and consider whether there is a need to remove the references to specific designations and revise language to establish qualifications for acceptable professional designations. And so previously, Candy was the leader in the clubhouse for that working group. We wanted to reignite that and just clean up that rule. Right now, the rule has, outdated designations. It's not totally comprehensive. So we wanted to empower TREC staff and TREC with a more, empower them to be able to make that decision on what constitutes a professional designation within the rule. So Candy, are you still okay with leading that charge?
I am absolutely. I raised my hand saying I would love to do this.
Awesome. Okay, and the one thing that happened last time is that this group got very excited about this, and we outdid ourselves with the amount of people that we put on that working group. So really what I'm looking for this time is maybe 3 more additional committee members that would be willing to serve on this so that we keep it nice and small. They will bring it back to us for a final vote to push the revision forward. So if anybody else is interested, I'm going to go by order of which I see your hands raised to serve on this working group. Nobody?
Kalea, I'm seeing hands.
Okay, Linda. I see Linda. Anybody else?
Marion.
Marion, wonderful. Thank you. One more.
Kelly's hands up.
Kelly, great. Linda, Marion, and Kelly are going to serve on that working group. And Candy, I'll let you take that offline with them to schedule a good time for you all to talk about that. Does anybody have any questions or
Can
comments?
I just say one more thing just real quick?
Sure.
Can you give us Vanessa's email address? I was trying to catch that on the last one because Vanessa said email it to me, and it's like, ugh.
Vanessa, do you want to let everybody know what it is?
I will. I'll put it in the chat. I'll also send an email to the whole group just so that you have it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, well, that was great. Thank you so much for serving on that, everyone. I know that will be helpful to get that rule cleaned up. It's been long overdue. Okay, discussion item number 10 on the agenda, discussion and possible action regarding the exam proctoring and public comment received regarding Truck Rule 535.65, responsibilities and operations of providers of qualifying courses. This agenda item was added at the request of the CE shop. They have submitted a written comment and a proposed rule draft, and maybe they might be present today to speak to this. The information was included in your backup, and I know that Jennifer can speak to the history of the rule. So really what we would like to see or get consensus on is if this group would like to revisit this rule and open discussion. Jennifer, why don't you kick us off?
Sure, thanks, Kalea. Yeah, I'll just kind of recap again, just kind of very briefly how this came about. Previous ESAC committee members shared concerns about course and final exam integrity and the need to better ensure that the student taking the courses and the final exams was the student who received credit for passing the courses. So as a result, they recommended increased interactivity in qualifying courses and an exam proctoring requirement. Just as a reminder, both of which were considered by the commission and then adopted by rule. The exam proctoring requirement, which is what is specifically addressed in this agenda item, requires qualifying course final exams to be proctored either live and in person or through technology acceptable to the commission. And then again, just as a reminder, some of the examples of exam proctoring that take place through technology include the employment of an online proctoring vendor, Examity and ProctorU are examples, and then others include live stream video or recorded video, where tools are in place to prevent the student from opening other web browsers or accessing other course materials. So that's just a recap of what occurred and a little bit about the why.
Thank you, Jennifer. And just a little comment from my perspective. I don't want to be flippant about this because of the times that we're in with regards to our new normal and ensuring that we're not just unnecessarily making things harder. Where I get stuck on this is the current rule does say third-party proctor acceptable to the commission, including a technology. And so the recommendation by the CE shop in their proposal, it feels like it's a little duplicative, but I would be open to hearing your thoughts and this body's opinions of what they're proposing and if we do want to move this forward. Anybody? Marianne, I see your hand up. Did you want to speak to this? No? All right. Anybody else have any comments on this? Thoughts? Do we want to move this forward? Mr. Albers?
Clay, I agree with your analysis. I mean, I think the rule pretty much already says what the CE shop wants. I think the distinction is that the TREC staff is not bending to what the CE shop wants in their judgment. And I happen to agree with the staff in their particular position on this. And I mean, other education providers are able to give what TREC is looking for. And I think the rule is just fine the way it is.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? Speak up, because I may not see you if you are raising your hand. All right. So Jennifer, Abby, or Vanessa, how do you propose do we need to vote this down, or do we need to take a vote on whether or not we want to consider this rule change? How do you recommend that we proceed?
And Clay, it does look like you have a hand up from maybe someone from the CE shop.
Oh, is the CE shop here? Please unmute yourself if you want to make a comment. Miss Rebecca?
Yes, hi. That is me. I am Rebecca. I'm Rebecca Pildingsrud. Yeah, thanks for letting us come on here. So, you know, we have sent in this proposed rule change at the direction of TREC. So we had some back and forth with them regarding this particular rule. And excuse me, they had suggested that we propose a rule change. So that is what we have done. And we, you know, employ a myriad of technical solutions that are in our system and easily implemented that use user authentication, system timeout, course progression, exam pools, final exam navigation restrictions, etc. I won't read them all to you. There is a document in there that outlines every single one of the ones that we have available to implement in order to keep our exam secure and ensure that our students are getting the best possible experience. You know, just to be perfectly honest and frank, students do not like proctoring. It is very cumbersome for them. And we are trying to find some alternative solutions using technology that could be an either or. So we're not necessarily asking to eliminate proctoring entirely, but to, you know, right now the rule says technology acceptable to the commission. Well, there's no definitions out there of what that means or what that would be. So we're trying to, you know, offer some solutions to help identify what those technological solutions could be, and then, you know, make the rule a little bit more broad to encompass those as well.
Thank you. I think that's helpful to us. Jennifer, did you want to speak to that?
Sure. I just wanted to add something. I think the purview of the previous committee and the language, the specific language that was used, was intended to be broad enough without implying the use of a specific online tool. I think the idea was not to limit the opportunities that education providers could implement by getting really into the specifics. So I understand what you're saying, Rebecca, and sometimes it is hard to work with, you know, with those parameters. But and the other thing is, you know, we have made available a checklist for education providers to use as kind of a guideline for what your, you know, what minimum requirements need to be met in order to satisfy the proctoring requirement. one of the things that I noticed, and I don't know if this is key to the conversation, but I will bring it up, is in the proposal that the CE shop has provided, they have eliminated the requirement for exams to be closed book. And I don't know if that's something, you know, that, Rebecca, I'll ask you. I mean, is that one of the key issues in the way that you've proposed alternative language?
Yeah, so the closed book, which in, you know, a classroom setting would be no additional materials allowed. So all of our courses are 100% online. We don't have a book. We don't have extra materials. Everything that we offer to students is located within our LMS. So any resources, all of the curriculum, all content, exams, etc., everything is securely within that LMS. So, you know, we are able to, much like some of the online proctoring vendors, let students go into their exam, and then if they try to navigate away from that tab or browser that they have open, it'll shut the exam down. So they, you know, they can't open another browser, and so they can get back into their account to look up an answer, for example. If they try to log in twice, it'll log them out of their exam, because our system has a, you know, one time, you can only be logged in from one device and or one tab browser at a time. So everything gets shut down if they try to, you know, if they tried to like log in from their phone or something like that. I don't think that it would help if they had a book sitting in front of them to take our exam. The other thing that we are also able to do is to time the final exams, which would prohibit that as well. So, you know, I know that the prior committee was very concerned about students cheating on the final exam. And, you know, we want our students to be able to, you know, go out into the world and use what they've learned in a positive manner. And so we are trying to, you know, make this a little bit more easy for students. And so we can time our final exams to, you know, whatever we would need to time it to. So limit that to maybe 1 minute or 2 minutes per question. So students really wouldn't even have time to go look up answers if they wanted to. So if they were trying to do something like that, they would probably take too long on their final exam, and it would time them out, shut it down, and they would fail that exam. So that we have some things in place to address some of those issues. And that's kind of what we're trying to propose here, is that instead of proctoring, that some of these advanced technological things that we have put into place in our system are, you know, acceptable to the commission. You know, if it doesn't require a rule change, that's totally fine. We're just trying to, you know, figure out how to get somebody to look at our stuff. Because I think there's really some really good stuff in there that will help do that. We also have a bio authentication that we could implement where students have to type in a phrase. So we could do that at the beginning, maybe even during the final exam and at the end to authenticate their identity. You know, so there's all sorts of things that we can do to help limit those concerns that were brought on by the previous ESAC committee.
Can I speak to that real quick, Kalia?
Sure.
My question for my own clarification, and also for the clarification if anyone else needs it of the committee, is, Rebecca, is the video component the primary issue that you have? Because everything that you're describing is already, you know, that's all great and all types of things that are already utilized. So I guess I'm just curious, when you reference the issue of a closed book, meaning you need to be able to see the student to see that they're not accessing a textbook. You've already got the lockdown features on the web browser. Is it the visual component that you all have the most difficulty with? And if so, that might help inform this group in considering this.
Yeah, sure. So right now we're using a third-party vendor that records all of the final exams. And then we have a third-party person unaffiliated with the CE shop through that vendor who watches the student take the exam and, you know, watches for instances of cheating or them talking to somebody or anything like that. That part we aren't able to implement. You know, it's video is a really testy thing, and it takes a lot of bandwidth and it takes a lot of storage capacity to store that kind of stuff. So we're just trying to, you know, have our students get away from that. You know, it also causes a lot of test anxiety. Students just kind of freak out when they hear proctor, and then they have to schedule and wait for their scheduled time, which may be a day or 2 or 3. And it just really, you know, kind of, we get a lot of feedback from them that they're not, you know, it doesn't help them prepare for the final exam. You know, and ultimately, the students have to pass the state licensing exam anyway. So if they cheated or not, they still have to pass the state exam. And if they aren't able to pass our exams without cheating, they're never going to pass the licensing exam. So, you know, that's another part where we feel pretty strongly about this. You know, there is another gate, for lack of a better word. You know, the licensing exam is the next step once they complete all of their pre-licensing courses. Does that help?
Jennifer, does that help? Does that help this group? Did we have any questions for Rebecca?
I just had a comment.
Sure.
It concerns me greatly to hear you say limit the time on how long they have to answer the question. I think you could get into ADA with that. There are people who have some disabilities, some issues. And if you want to put major stress on them, put a time limit on it and they will come unglued. Just watching on GRI. Also, you know, saying we're doing this to limit, I'm going to tell you right now, I have 3 devices, 3 screens on the wall, and I have 3 devices in my lap. If I'm going to cheat, I'm going to cheat. And I understand what we're saying. Open book, closed book. I think it's going to be a closed book. They got to be able to use the information, not just access it. So, is it only, and I don't mean to sound not yucky about this, is it only one provider that has this issue? That's what I guess that's my question, because we've got a plethora of providers. Are we all having this across the board? Do we know?
That's a great question for Jennifer. Are we experiencing this in other complaints or concerns from other providers?
I'll say, in all honesty, it was a bit of work for our education providers to implement this, but everyone has been successfully able to do so. So I guess by that, I just want to acknowledge the effort that was made by our education providers to accommodate this, but also acknowledge that they have all managed to accommodate it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the committee? And then also from staff, do we need to take a vote, I'm assuming?
I think that would be helpful, just to give us some direction of you know, how to proceed. I think it'd be helpful to do that.
Okay. Any, Marianne, is your hand is up, I see. Do you have a comment? No? Okay. Abby, I'm sorry?
Sorry, I need to take it down.
Oh, okay, that's all right. Abby, do you have a recommended motion or of how we would take this up?
I'll certainly take suggestions from Vanessa or Jen, but I'm thinking something like either, you know, move that staff look at examining this rule as it relates to the C shop's concerns, you know, something something general like that, where you're basically just giving us directions of whether you want staff to actually consider revising this rule based on the concerns outlined by the CE shop.
Okay. Does anybody on the committee want to take a stab at that motion? Mr. Albers.
I move that we decline to act on item 10 in that the current rule is sufficient as it stands.
All right. Thank you, sir. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed?
Audibly aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries.
You might want to check for an abstention.
Oh, are there any abstentions?
Okay.
Okay. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us and for the work you've done for our consideration. We certainly appreciate it. And I think that they, you know, should this come up again or continue to come up, we will definitely take a look at it again.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to us.
Okay, you have a great day. Amber, did you have a comment?
Yes, I'm sorry. I might not have heard it. Did we get a second on Mr. Albert's motion?
Good call.
I seconded it, but I didn't think anybody heard me.
Thank you. I thought I
Great.
heard it, but I didn't call it out. That's my fault. Thank
It
you.
helps for the meeting or the minutes,
Yes.
excuse me. Thank you.
Candy, note that Candy seconded it for us. Thank you, Candy. Okay. Let's go back up to the agenda here. Any discussion regarding agenda items for next meeting? I was thinking that we could get an update from the broker working group and maybe an update from the Marion and Charles and Byron that are working on the legal updates. And Mr. Crowley, I just noted your abstention. Thank you. Anything else that we want to add to the agenda for next time? Staff, am I missing anything that we had on the books?
Clay, I was looking at the chat, but did you say professional designations?
An update from the professional,
Okay.
Yeah, a final recommendation for the professional designations rule. Thank you. So Candy and team, please let us know if you are unable to meet or craft a final recommendation by the next meeting, because we can certainly push that back. But unless you think that's not sufficient time, I was thinking that we could bring that back for our agenda next meeting. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Albers. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, did it the wrong way. I think this was said, but I want to verify that somehow we might get the answers to the survey that we're all going to answer this week.
Great question.
I can speak to that because Leslie texted me during this meeting. Yes, so she'll put together the responses, and we can provide that in your materials for the next meeting. She also wanted to extend an invite. That broker responsibility working group is meeting. Oh, I said this with such confidence. I think on the 14th. Hold on. On the 14th, starting at 10 a.m. and you know, anyone is welcome. There's the link in the agenda. If you want to attend, you're more than welcome to attend, but we will go ahead and get all those survey results put together, and you can have it for your next meeting.
That's wonderful. Vanessa, would you mind putting the link to that working group in the survey email that you send out?
Yeah, I absolutely will.
That would be great.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Just to have it in another spot.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Any other items for our next agenda? Thoughts? All right. Well, we made it in an hour and 20 minutes, so I think we did pretty good considering the work we had today. Thank you all for your time. Our next meeting is July 7th.
Yep.
And October 4th. Are those okay for everybody still?
Yep.
Thumbs up? Okay. July 7th it is. I hope you all stay safe and this meeting is adjourned.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll see you next time.
Bye, Colette.
Bye, guys. Thank you. Thanks for all your help.